The Persians and today, Iranians are definitely one of the most successful ethnic groups in human history, from the First World Empire, the Achaemenid Empire, to the last ruler of the classical world, the Sassanid Persian Empire. Despite their glorious and splendid history, Iran's current situation is quite complicated. To clarify Iran's issues, we need to start by talking about its neighbors, the Arabs. Long-time viewers should know that the Persians have a very long civilization, one that was on par with ancient Greek and Roman civilizations, and they were in constant competition with them. In the 6th century BC, they established what was then the most powerful empire in the world. However, the Arabs until the 7th century AD were still primitive tribes living in the desert. Even at the beginning of the 7th century, which is around the time of China's Sui dynasty, the Arabs lived a peaceful and simple life, farming and herding sheep, acting as middlemen between Europe and Asia to earn profits, without showing any ambition to conquer the world. However, this group of peaceful nomads and merchants suddenly transformed in the first half of the 7th century, mounting horses to conquer the world. The reason is quite simple: an Arab named Muhammad emerged and founded Islam. He then spread Islam through military conquests. Thus, Arabs were no longer peaceful nomads and merchants, but evolved into a fighting nation for Allah, continuously expanding their territory and assimilating conquered peoples into Muslims who believe in Islam. This included the Persians. The Persians originally had their own original religion, Zoroastrianism. However, from 633 to 636 AD, when the Persian Sassanid Empire was plagued by internal strife and external threats, it was conquered by the Arabs, transformed into a fighting nation, gradually converting to Islam. This is the root of Islamic rule in Iran. It is not hard to see that Islam, since its inception, has been a model of church-state unity. Muhammad was both the founder of Islam and the founder of the Arab Empire. Therefore, internal divisions within Islam also have characteristics of church-state unity. Like Christianity and other religions, Islam has experienced splits as well. However, these splits in Islam were not due to differences in doctrine, but rather over who would be the legitimate successor to Muhammad. In 632 AD, when Prophet Muhammad died without clearly designating his successor, there was a serious disagreement among people about who should lead the country. One group believed that the leader should be elected by the Muslim community, similar to Rome's Senate, forming the Sunni sect. Another group believed that the leader should be Ali, Muhammad's cousin and son-in-law, and only members of Muhammad's family could inherit this position, forming the Shia sect. At this point, I wonder if everyone has noticed, the disagreement between Sunnis and Shias appears to revolve around who should succeed as leader, but in reality, it is about the source of legitimate power. Sunnis believe that legitimacy comes from the Muslim community, while Shiites believe it comes from a sacred lineage. Simply put, Sunnis are akin to an aristocratic republic where law supersedes individuals. Rulers are merely executors of Allah's laws and not the laws themselves. Shiites, on the other hand, are like divine right monarchy, meaning the supreme leader always has ultimate legitimacy. He may not directly manage the state, but is Allah's representative and absolute authority. If it's still hard to understand, Sunnis would think that someone should be elected by a political bureau standing committee, who can only govern according to Mao's established rules, merely an executor of laws. Shiites believe that members of Mao's family should become the supreme leader, who is law itself and absolute authority. From this, we can see that there isn't an infallible supreme leader in Sunni tradition, but in Shiite tradition, there exists a supreme leader called Imam, protected by God and capable of correctly interpreting revelations. Today's Iran is a Shiite Islamic state, which explains why Khamenei has absolute highest authority. But those familiar with history know that the Arab Empire historically followed Sunni traditions, so during Arab rule over Iran, it naturally adhered to Sunni tradition as well. Shia Muslims were marginalized in the periphery of the Islamic world, so why did Iran later become Shiite? This leads us to an important dynasty in modern Iranian history, the Safavid dynasty. After the fall of the Arab Empire, Iranians were first ruled by Turks and then Mongols. When the Mongol established regime fell, Iran was divided for a century before being unified again under the rule of the Safavid dynasty in the 16th century. It is on this foundation of the Safavid dynasty that modern sovereign state of Iran was established. The founder of the Safavid dynasty was Ismail I from the Safavi family in Azerbaijan, Persia, an ardent follower of the Twelver Shia sect, the largest branch within Shiism. Shortly after ascending to the throne, he declared Shia Islam as the official religion at the Great Mosque of Bursa on Friday. The question then arises, why did Iranian rulers choose this marginalized sect of Islam under the orthodox Islamic rule of the Arab Empire as their state religion? The reason is quite simple. Although they accepted Islam, they were not Arabs. During the period of Arab rule, while Persians adopted Islam and became Muslims in terms of religion, but politically, they were always second-class citizens being dominated by the Arabs. So when Persians were fighting for national independence and rebuilding their identity as Persians, they had to distance themselves from the Arabs, but the Persians had already converted to Islam, so it was difficult to go back to Zoroastrianism or revive the Sassanid Empire. What could they do then? The simplest solution would be to embrace Shia Islam. Since you Arabs are Sunni Muslims, we oppose Sunnism and distance ourselves from you by establishing Shiism as our state religion. This way, the Safavid dynasty tied Shia faith with Persian identity together, merging them into one entity along with the nation state. From then on, Shiism was no longer just a religious stance but became an expression of being Iranian or Persian. The history of Shiism gradually equated to Iran's history, while that of the Arab Empire was seen as foreign history. This way they could maintain their Muslim identity, yet distance themselves from Arabs without changing it. Before, Shia Islam had always been persecuted as a heresy by mainstream Sunni Islam and had survived in marginal areas, and Persians were also ruled by this foreign Arab power, oppressed by them, and treated as second-class citizens. So the story of Shiism and that of the Iranian nation could seamlessly connect on some level. Thus, Iranians gradually internalized such deep narratives. We Iranians are a community standing for justice throughout history, but repeatedly oppressed by powers. In this narrative, Iran is the besieged righteous party while the external world equals potential unjust powers. The Safavid dynasty thus shaped a collective memory of a nation through Shia Islam, laying the foundation for modern Iranian nationalism. And speaking of which, quick-witted viewers might have already noticed that such victim narratives and anti-hegemonic nationalisms can seamlessly connect with anti-imperialism or anti-Western discourse. That is right. This is actually one of the deep reasons why the Islamic Revolution in Iran succeeded in establishing a theocratic regime in 1979, an unprecedented regression in human history. If the Safavid dynasty hadn't lasted long, Shia forces might have quickly disappeared from Iran, and that anti-hegemonic narrative probably wouldn't have endured either. But those familiar with history know that the Safavid dynasty was far from fleeting. Despite some inherent economic issues, they found a new channel for commodity exports, and soon thrived through foreign trade, expanding their empire's borders beyond the Iranian plateau to include regions like the Caucasus, Hyrcania, and the Persian Gulf. The Safavids broke Portugal's monopoly over the Persian Gulf and engaged in commerce and diplomacy with early modern European states via sea and land routes, leaving a significant impact on world history from the 16th century to late 18th century. Throughout this period, Safavid rulers continuously sought to maintain their Shia empire in Western Asia against Sunni forces like the Ottoman Empire through religious rituals, political propaganda, cultural creation, and by creating enemies to strengthen communal identity. Thus, Iranian national identity based on Shia faith became increasingly solidified. In 1722, Afghan Ghilzai tribes captured Isfahan, capital of the Safavid dynasty, leading to its main forces' demise. But while the state fell, Shia Iran didn't. 2 centuries of Safavid rule had fundamentally transformed Iran and left 3 indelible legacies: nationwide Shia faith, localized clerical class, and an identity equating Iran with non-Sunni world. This meant that Shi'ism was no longer tied to a single dynasty, but became part of the social structure itself. Although Nadir Shah, a military warlord who later ruled Iran, tried to downplay Shi'ism, or even reconcile with Sunnism, his Afsharid dynasty was short-lived and couldn't compare in influence to the 2-century-long Safavid rule. So his religious policies and ephemeral dynasty quickly disintegrated after his death. The subsequent Zand dynasty also didn't last long and only controlled central and southern Iran. In late 18th century, a Turkic tribe from Qajar defeated the Zands and took control of all of Iran, establishing the Qajar dynasty, which finally stabilized the political situation in Iran. Why could this foreign group establish a relatively stable regime then? That is right, because their rulers were devout Shia Muslims who aligned with Iran's mainstream religious structure. It was clear that at this point, Shia faith had become almost synonymous with legitimacy of power. By late Qajar period, the Shia clerical class gradually broke free from government control and established independent church institutions and taxation systems, reaching a level where they could counterbalance state power. The moral advocacy for Iranian national and people's interests by these religious organizations against this foreign-ruled state machine transformed them into representatives of ethical values. A typical case was the tobacco protest in 1891. In that year, the Qajar authorities ceded tobacco monopoly rights to a British company under pressure from Western powers, sparking public discontent. The Shia spiritual leader then took on the role as a mobilizer against the government and issued an edict prohibiting smoking. Overnight, all citizens began boycotting tobacco. The ultimate ruler of the Qajar dynasty had to make concessions and withdrew the tobacco monopoly rights held by the British company, while Shia religious leaders revoked the ban on tobacco. You see, did the Shia clerical class play a role in representing the interests of Iran's nation and people? Another typical case is the Constitutional Revolution from 1905 to 1911. At the beginning of the 20th century, the Qajar dynasty authorities signed a series of trade expansion agreements with European powers to solve their financial crisis, selling monetary issuance rights, oil extraction rights to Britain and fishing rights near the sea, insurance and transportation rights to Russia. This led to discontent among the Iranian people again. At this time, Shia religious leaders once again took on the role of mobilizing the masses against the authorities, leading the people in a constitutional revolution, trying to turn Iran into a constitutional monarchy, resisting the division by Britain and Russia. In this way, Shia clerics became pioneers in resisting Western colonialism in the hearts of Iranians, laying the groundwork for future Islamic revolution. During World War I, due to conflicts among revolutionary parties that led the Constitutional Revolution and both Britain and Russia getting involved in the war, Iran fell into a state of power vacuum, which gave military leader Reza Pahlavi an opportunity. In 1921, he staged a military coup and entered the political stage, ascending to the throne in 1925, initiating the Pahlavi dynasty. The Pahlavi dynasty completely transformed Iran's politics, society, and economy. During the turbulent period after World War I, relying on oil revenues and powerful military forces, Reza Pahlavi's dictatorial rule established modern administrative and educational institutions through centralized efforts, vigorously implementing westernization reforms, bringing Iran into many aspects of a modern nation state while also pursuing relatively independent foreign policies. However, all this came at the cost of sacrificing the democratic rights and personal freedoms of the entire nation and people, which naturally led to strong dissatisfaction among the masses over time. The Safavid dynasty bound Shia faith with Iranian national identity, laying the foundation for Iranian nationalism through religion. During the Qajar dynasty period, Iranian Shia leaders again shaped themselves as spokespeople for the interests of the people by balancing against unpopular governments during tobacco protests and constitutional revolutions, and as pioneers in resisting Western colonialism. Shi'ism is both this nation's moral language and a tool for protest as well as a symbol of resistance to oppression. So when you think about it, Isn't it not strange at all that Shia religious leaders stood up to mobilize the masses during the Pahlavi dynasty's dictatorial rule? Wasn't it actually quite understandable? Ayatollah Khomeini took advantage of this point to lead the Islamic Revolution and mobilized Iranians to overthrow the Pahlavi dynasty, establishing a theocratic regime. If viewed from an omniscient perspective, some people might think that Iranians did something foolish by elevating Ayatollah Khomeini as supreme leader and enacting a religious constitution, leading them to their current situation. But after watching this episode, I believe everyone will understand where Iran's problems lie. The Safavid dynasty shaped the collective memory of a nation through Shiism, laying the foundation for Iranian nationalism. Its far-reaching impact is akin to Emperor Qin Shi Huang unifying China by conquering 6 states. Therefore, you'll see that after the Safavid dynasty, although Iran underwent dynastic changes, external pressures, modernization shocks, and revolutionary breaks, Shia clerics appeared in different ways during each crisis, sometimes providing legitimacy for regimes, sometimes balancing against state machinery, and sometimes opposing previous regimes. It is no longer just a faith but a collective judgment mechanism about orthodoxy, justice, and injustice. In other words, even as the form of the state repeatedly changes, Shiism remains the core language in Iranian society used to judge what constitutes legitimate governance. So it is not that Iranians are stupid, rather this 500-year-old discourse system has such strong inertia. Just like how Chinese people find it hard to break away from the main thread of unification, spanning 2,000 years, achieving national unity has long been the core language for judging what constitutes legitimate and just governance, a collective judgment mechanism about whether a regime is orthodox or just. But have you noticed a very positive phenomenon currently happening in this ongoing Iranian democratic revolution? Revolutionaries are using the flag of the Pahlavi dynasty to oppose Iran's theocratic regime. Some netizens mock these Iranians, saying why would they use the flag of a dictatorial regime during their democratic revolution? This is something people don't understand. Although the Pahlavi dynasty was dictatorial, its ideology was very revolutionary. It advocated completely secularizing Iranian identity and replacing Shia-based self-identity with that of Persians from pre-Islamic times, such as the Achaemenid Empire and Sasanian Empire. So their flag features a lion holding a curved sword symbolizing secular royal power, and a sun representing Zoroastrianism's god of light, immediately evoking images of pre-Islamic Iran. King Pahlavi's title King of Kings and his extravagant lifestyle also served the purpose of reconstructing national identity. This was actually one of the deeper reasons people opposed the Pahlavi dynasty at that time. From Iran's political grammar based on Shiism, dismantling national identity is as abhorrent as dictatorship. Do Iranians not know that the Pahlavi dynasty was a dictatorial regime? Of course they do. So I think this flag is really significant. When the Pahlavi flag appears, it actually shows that Iranians are reflecting very thoroughly. They want to break the historical inertia since the Safavid dynasty completely abandoned the political grammar and national narrative based on Shiism, and carry out a thorough revolution in terms of nationality, rather than just changing the government structure. So now Iranians supporting the Crown Prince of Pahlavi is logically consistent. I see some netizens are still busy educating others like his dad wasn't a good guy, he just wants to be king. But let's stick to the facts. Is there anything wrong with the role that the Crown Prince of Pahlavi is playing now? Are the things he says and does wrong? At least he is indeed helping the Iranian revolution in reality, right? After the religious regime falls, who will govern? Well, first we need to make it fall, right? Whether Iranians will let him take power after using him to get rid of the religious regime, that is another matter. Of course, this is just my guess for reference only. But anyway, I think every person with a sense of justice should pray for the Iranian people, wishing them to achieve more victories with less sacrifice and make Iran Persian again. Okay.